At the heart of this story is a daughter trying to live up to the man who trained her long before the world believed in her. Every choke, every decision, every act of courage is tied to the lessons her father left behind in a notebook and a worn black belt. This hook turns the story into something bigger than combat. It becomes about inheritance, identity, and what it truly means to be a warrior under fire.
200 reps down as dawn broke over Coronado. The 0530 air was a cocktail of sea spray and JP5. Her muscles were on fire, her breathing steady, quitting wasn't in her DNA. 30 frogmen moved in perfect sync around her. A brotherhood forged in the sandbox, and she was one of them. At 5'3", 125 pounds, she was the deadliest operator in Team 5. She'd bled for that spot every day for 2 years. Time! The command from Master Chief Turner split the air. On your feet. Stretch it out. Mitchell was up in one fluid motion, no tremor. Shaking was a liability. Doubt was a bullet. The team stretched in shared silence. Her brothers, they'd seen her conquer Hell Week and earn her trident. Then the convoy rolled in, bringing a different kind of war. But before that, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment with your location. All right. Back to the story. 3 olive drab personnel carriers, emblazoned with the eagle, globe, and anchor, ground to a halt. A new tension hung in the air. The rivalry between SEALs and Marines was a thing of legend. The doors hissed, spitting out 6 Force Recon jarheads. They walked with the swagger of high-altitude jumpers. Mitchell knew the type. Their staff sergeant, Bennett, was a solid 6'2", all muscle. Turner extended a hand. Master Chief Turner, welcome to our house. Bennett's handshake was a power play, his eyes sizing up the team. His gaze lingered on Mitchell, a smirk twisting his lips. His next words lit the fuse. Staff Sergeant Marcus Bennett, Force Recon, he announced. Here for a 2-week joint training evolution. Good to have you aboard, Turner replied, gesturing to his men. My boys are squared away. We'll run some drills, share tactics. Bennett's gaze locked back onto Mitchell, dripping with contempt. All your boys? The words hit the deck like a live grenade. That brand of hate was an old, familiar ghost. It had stalked her from day one. Doubt was a constant shadow. Bennett addressed his squad, his voice loud. Looks like naval special warfare is lowering the bar. He let that sink in. Maybe she handles the chow. The Marine snorted. The SEALs were statues. 30 sets of eyes were fixed on her. She held her bearing, staring into the middle distance. Her father's advice echoed from years ago. Asterisk. When they come at you, be granite. Be the tide. Show them nothing. Asterisk. Bennett closed the distance, stopping 3 feet short of her personal space. A clear act of intimidation. So what's your job here, sailor? The jab was deliberate. She met his stare, her voice flat. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell. SEAL Team 5. A SEAL, he repeated, the words sour in his mouth. How long you been playing dress-up, Lieutenant? 2 years, Staff Sergeant. 2 whole years, he mocked. You hear that, boys? We got a regular salty dog here. His smile was a razor. So they water down Bud, S for you? Give you a smaller log, maybe? Let you skip surf torture? A nerve in her jaw jumped. Same course, same standards, same damn Hell Week. Right, Bennett scoffed. I bet. He turned to the crowd. I'm sure the Navy ran a fair test. No politics involved, no quotas from the top, no pressure from DC. He leaned in, his voice a low threat. Try not to chip a nail, Princess. It's only 14 days. The insult found its target. Her fist tightened. A primal urge to wipe that smirk off his face surged through her, but she was granite, the tide. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Her voice was ice. He held her gaze for 3 beats, then pivoted to the Master Chief. My Marines are ready to rock, Master Chief, long as we're not on diaper duty. Turner's expression was a mask carved from 32 years of conflict. Our mission is training. Staff Sergeant, get your men settled. The formations broke. The Marines headed for their barracks. The SEALs melted away. Mitchell stood alone for a moment before heading to the surf. She had to douse the fire. Bennett had just pulled the pin on a grenade that could end her career. That night would prove whether warriors are forged or born. The next 12 days became a campaign of psychological warfare. In briefings, on ops, at Chow, the assault never stopped. At the range, Mitchell shot her qual. 40 rounds, 300 yards, irons only, in a 15-knot crosswind. She timed each shot between heartbeats, a lesson from her father. 40 rounds downrange, 40 impacts in a fist-sized group, a perfect run. From the observation tower, Bennett remarked, "Guess they gave her a closer target, probably shooting from the 10-yard line." His men laughed. Mitchell cleared her weapon, the comment bouncing off her armor. Bennett had no idea the storm he was brewing. Next up, a 2-mile open water swim, 62-degree ocean, full kit, 50-pound ruck. She knew this water. Its bite was an old friend from Hell Week. She hit the beach 8 minutes before anyone else, breathing hard but controlled. She wasn't shivering. Bennett was waiting on the sand. Must have caught a favorable tide, less drag with your frame. Mitchell squeezed seawater from her braid. "Yes, Staff Sergeant." The final evolution was the live fire shoot house. This was where one wrong move meant a body bag. Her team cleared 6 rooms, neutralizing 42 hostiles, 0 friendlies, in 93 seconds. A flawless run. Bennett reviewed the footage. Cardboard cutouts don't fire back. His corporal, Garcia, added his 2 cents. Women ain't wired for combat. They freeze up when the lead starts flying. 15 feet away, Mitchell field stripped her rifle. She heard every word, her face a blank slate. Garcia was about to get a painful education. The gym was a sea of operators on sparring mats. The SEAL Combatives instructor, a grizzled old chief, called for volunteers. "I need a striker and a grappler for a hybrid fighting demo." "I'll volunteer the lieutenant," Bennett's voice cut through the quiet. Mitchell met his cold grin. "Your time to shine, Lieutenant. Let's see what this new Navy is made of." The instructor intervened. "Staff Sergeant, with all due respect, Chief, this is about joint ops, ain't it? So let's get joint." Bennett gestured to his man. "Garcia's a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo. He'll keep it light." Garcia, 5 to 9 of coiled muscle, smirked. "Don't worry, ma'am." Sarah glanced at the chief. His eyes confirmed it. This was a public execution. This was a public shakedown, plain and simple. His nod was the signal. The choice was hers. Mitchell stepped onto the mat. No hesitation. "Okay," the instructor began. "Light sparring, 20%, mind your form." "Negative," Bennett snapped. "Full go, 100%. Let's see what a real frogman can do." The room went dead quiet. 60 operators watched, the air thick with tension. This wasn't training. It was a verdict on her career. The chief met Sarah's eyes. "You good with that, Lieutenant?" She measured Garcia, his fighter stance. The overconfidence of a man who figured he'd already won. Her old man's voice returned. Asterisk, they always show their hand. You just have to be ready to see it. Asterisk, full contact is a go, Chief. The next 18 seconds electrified the room and set in motion a final conflict that would cost someone everything. He bounced on his toes, loose and cocky, already tasting victory. The instructor sighed. "Okay, standard rules of engagement. No strikes to the groin, throat, or eyes. Fight ends on a tap-out, verbal submission, or my call." He looked at them both. "Touch gloves. Keep it clean." Their gloves met. Hers were dwarfed by his. "Ready?" The instructor's hand fell. "Engage." Garcia surged, throwing a fast jab followed by a picture-perfect spinning back kick. It was a textbook fight ender, but she was gone. She had read the tell in his hips, the subtle weight shift that telegraphed the move. He was fully committed. The kick was a runaway train. She slipped inside the arc of the strike, using his own momentum against him. Garcia stumbled, swinging at empty air. She was already at his back. A low sweep took out his plant leg, turning his offense into his downfall. A flash of panic crossed Garcia's face as his world flipped upside down. The mat smacked his back, hard. Sarah was on him instantly, locking down side control. He tried to buck her off, to make space, but she'd already trapped his arm, her legs snaking into a triangle from the top. He shoved a hand at her throat, a desperate, sloppy counter. Sarah flowed with the push, rolled with him, and transitioned to a full mount. The choke tightened, her own shoulder cutting off blood flow on one side. his trapped arm doing the work on the other. His vision started to shrink. Garcia's eyes widened as he thrashed uselessly beneath her. His face turned from red to a deep purple. He slapped the mat a frantic, 3-beat rhythm of defeat. Sarah released the hold immediately, rolling away as he gasped for air. 18 seconds. The gym was tomb silent. Sarah offered Garcia a hand up. After a moment, he took it. Nice roll, Corporal. Garcia rubbed his neck, seeing her for the first time. Where the hell did you learn that? My father. You might say BJJ was my first language. Bennett's voice cut through the stunned silence. Fluke, he said, the word dripping with venom. Anyone can get a lucky break. The spell broke. A low rumble started among the Marines. The instructor moved to intervene, but Master Chief Turner emerged from the background. Sarah hadn't even realized he was there. His 62-year-old eyes were still sharp as glass as they fixed on Bennett. You could be right, Staff Sergeant. Turner's voice was low and dangerous. Once is a fluke. Bennett's smirk returned. That's what I'm saying, so we'll do it 6 more times. The room fell silent once more. Turner's next words sealed Sarah's fate. Turner strode to the mat's center. His legend walked with him. Master Chief Robert Turner, pinned his trident in 1982, had seen combat in every hellhole from Grenada to the modern-day sandbox. He didn't just train SEALs, he forged them. When he spoke, even full-bird colonels paid attention. You brought 6 recon Marines, Staff Sergeant Bennett. Lieutenant Mitchell is 1 SEAL. Turner's quiet authority filled the space. Seems like an unfair fight, don't you think? Bennett's bravado began to crack. Master Chief, all I meant was, here's the new plan. Turner took command of the entire room. Seems we've got a failure to communicate on unit standards, on who wears this patch. He stared daggers at Bennett. So let's get it squared away. A demonstration. Mitchell runs the gauntlet against your whole crew. 6 rounds. Full go. No breathers. The room erupted. The team guys were floored. The grunts looked like wolves circling fresh meat. Sarah's heart hammered her ribs. A 6-man gauntlet was basically a firing squad. Bennett's surprise morphed into a hungry smirk. What's the wager, Master Chief? Turner's smile was all blade. If Lieutenant Mitchell is the last one standing, you'll draft a formal apology to every woman on this installation. It'll be the cover page of your jacket. Bennett's jaw tightened. And if my boys put her down, she resigns her commission. Out of the teams, out of NSW. The world fell away from Sarah. Her entire career. Every sacrifice since she was 13, riding on one night's outcome. 1 week to train for a trial that would either cement her legacy or shatter her. It was a methodical plunge into misery. At 0430, Turner was at her hatch, offering black coffee and guaranteeing agony. He kept his promise. This was beyond regular PT, worse than the BUD, S-grinder. This was an education. 5-minute grappling sessions, a new body each time. Again, Turner ordered. You've got 6 men, 2-minute breaks, operate on empty. She had 30-second intervals to force down water and pray her lungs would inflate. 10 brutal rounds. 50 minutes of being systematically broken down. Her muscles burned. Her thoughts were sludge. 10 more. Sarah made it through 7 before she puked. Turner allowed her a minute. Again. At TAPS, she'd endured 25 sessions. Her body was a tapestry of bruises, fueled by nothing but sheer will. But Turner was just warming up. Day 2 was straight from her father's playbook. He opened the worn journal to page 15. Small joints are designed to buckle. Fingers, wrists, ankles. Be swift, be final, then move on. Each movement was brutally economical. For 14 hours, they worked submissions. Turner's own body was her training tool. She began to view every joint not as anatomy, but as a mechanical hinge waiting to be snapped. Your father was an engineer, Turner remarked softly. He saw the body as a machine, and all machines have a failure point. Her hands drilled the locks until they were second nature, isolating fingers, torquing elbows, memorizing the exact geometry of a structural break. Pain is a message, Turner coached. Attack a joint and you seize their whole system. Their mind will sacrifice anything to stop the signal. You make them a marionette. By the close of day 2, Sarah could diagnose a man's structural flaws just from his handshake. Day 3 was dedicated to spotting weakness before the first bell. Turner had her observe Bennett's squad at morning muster. "Your dad's second principle," he said, touching the book. "Every opponent has a tell. She spotted in 10 seconds. Capitalize in 1. She dissected them. Sergeant Cooper, nicknamed Tiny. 6'4", 240 pounds. A powerhouse, and just as lumbering. Under duress, his left hand would drop a relic from his time as a saw gunner. Corporal Davis, the team's marksman, was lanky with an attitude. He over-relied on his reach, exposing his neck with every jab, a critical error. Corporal Martinez, their medic, was clearly a former college wrestler. He was strong, but predictable. Every takedown began with the identical setup. Garcia was a known hothead. He'd charge in, furious and wide open. She already had his number. Rodriguez, known as Hound, was a street fighter without finesse. He telegraphed every power shot from a mile out. Finally, there was Bennett, the squad leader, a Golden Gloves boxer, precise and orthodox. But she found it. She studied him on the heavy bag. His right cross was a sledgehammer, his jab was a piston. But the tell was there, nearly imperceptible. With every right hand he threw, a flash of pain tightened his mouth's corner. An old shoulder issue, she guessed. He hit it well, but it was a chink in the armor. She filled the battered journal, his father's theorems on the left, her reconnaissance on the right. "We are not preparing to engage them," Turner said. "We are preparing to have already won." Day 4 was dedicated to speed. Day 5, to forging an indomitable spirit. Your dad would say, "Fast tops strong, smart tops fast." But fast and smart is a phantom. They rehearsed transitions until the sequence was a single, seamless idea. Escapes, reversals, and submissions blended into one fluid response. Her body started acting on its own. It was pure instinct, burned into her nervous system by countless repetitions. He fakes, she's on his flank. He shoves, she's redirecting his force. He thinks he has an angle, she's already vanished. Turner pushed the drills for 8 solid hours until she moved like smoke. "Speed ain't about moving quickly," Turner growled. "It's about not being where the punch is aimed." He had her sit, eyes shut, visualize all 6 fights. Picture yourself winning. Internalize it. Your mind won't know the difference. Claim your 6 wins right now. She saw Garcia's obvious kick, Davis's exposed throat, Martinez's telegraphed shot. She pictured Rodriguez's haymaker, Cooper's lowered guard, and Bennett's compromised shoulder. She visualized victory 6 times. "The body follows where the mind has already traveled," Turner explained. "More importantly, when you're broken down and bleeding, your mind will recall the win. It knows the path out." Days 6 and 7 were for recovery, but they also carried the gravity of her father's final lesson, the one she would need when the arena lights flared on Saturday night. Turner had her swim a relaxed 20 laps, the cold Pacific soothing her battered muscles. This was followed by ice baths, a deep tissue massage, and a colossal amount of food. "The fight is tomorrow," Turner said bluntly. "Your body's ready. Now your mind must become a weapon. Read this." He gave her the notebook, open to page 83. "Your father's final entry." Written the week before he deployed to Afghanistan, Sarah noticed the penmanship was unsteady, unlike the confident script in the rest of the book. He knew, "Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm not coming home. I'm sorry I won't get to see you become the warrior I always saw in you, the most formidable, brilliant woman I've ever known. But listen, strength isn't about avoiding the canvas. It's about answering the 10 count. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's pushing through it to complete the mission. And a warrior doesn't deny their pain. They face it, then re-engage. I love you, kid." Make them know the name Mitchell, Dad. She clutched the journal to her, absorbing his words. Tomorrow, 6 men would try to dismantle her life's work. She would teach them what it meant to be a Mitchell. Day 7 came, crisp and clear. At 2000 hours, 400 people would be watching. She required one last totem from her father, a keepsake Turner had reserved for this very moment. Saturday arrived bright and warm, 72 degrees with a sea breeze, a flawless Southern California day. A cold lump of dread settled in her gut. 1,800 hours, 2 hours to go. She sat in the stillness of her barracks room. His journal, his trident, and his worn Krav Maga black belt were mounted on her wall, relics of a demanding inheritance. A firm knock at the door. It's unlocked. Master Chief Turner entered, carrying a small kit bag. His expression was stone, but his eyes held warmth. You keeping it together? Terrified. Good. Your dad was always wired before an op. Said fear kept you sharp, kept your head on a swivel. Only idiots are fearless. A faint smile touched Sarah's lips. He did say that. Turner took a seat, removing a folded black cloth from his bag. Your father wanted you to have this. I promised him years ago. He instructed me to give it to you when you were up against your greatest fight. He unfolded the material, revealing a Krav Maga black belt. The belt was frayed, its color faded to a charcoal gray. This was his. He earned it in 1990. Wore it for 15 years. Every mission, every workup. He believed his fighting spirit was woven into its threads. Turner offered it to her. It's your mantle to bear now. Her hands trembled as she took it. The fabric felt ancient, almost sacred. She sensed his presence within it, his discipline, his grit, his love. Thank you, Master Chief. Hold your thanks. You have a battle to win. Turner rose. 2000. Punctuality is mandatory. He paused at the doorway. And Sarah, your old man, had a go-to phrase before every op, which was, pain is weakness leaving the body. Looks like you're due for a major strength increase. In 2 hours, she would walk into that arena in her father's belt. The brawl would become folklore on base. Little did she know the real test wasn't the first man, or the fifth. The real trial would come when her body was shutting down and her will was scraped raw, with nothing left but the words her father had written 13 years prior. The gym was a pressure cooker, jammed with bodies. Every SEAL, Marine, and officer from the base, 400 men crammed into a space built for half that. A lone ring sat harshly lit under the floodlights. The base CO had given it the green light. Sarah slipped in through a side entrance, wearing standard PT gear. Her father's belt was cinched at her waist. A hush fell over the gym. Master Chief Turner stood ready in her corner. He'd assembled a proper crew, 2 SEALs as seconds, armed with water and a trauma kit. Sarah ducked under the ropes. The canvas felt solid. Across the ring, Bennett's guys were all swagger and grins. Garcia was throwing shadow punches. Davis stretched. Martinez and Rodriguez bumped fists. Cooper, built like a fire plug, cracked his knuckles. Bennett's gaze met Sarah's and he mouthed, "You're done." Her face was stone. Captain Harrison, the CO, entered the ring. "Good evening. You're here for a sanctioned hand-to-hand exhibition. Corpsmen are on standby. We're following standard mixed martial arts rules. No cheap shots. Victory is by submission, KO, or referee stoppage." He let the silence hang. Lieutenant Mitchell will fight 6 men consecutively, with a 2-minute rest between bouts. Opponents will proceed from junior to senior rank. Harrison looked at Sarah. "Lieutenant, you accept?" "Yes, sir." "Staff Sergeant Bennett, your men agree?" "Roger that, sir. We're good to go." "Then begin." First match, Lieutenant Mitchell versus Corporal Garcia. The gym erupted. Sarah returned to her corner. The next half hour would define her career on this base. Garcia, she knew, had been plotting his revenge for a week. Turner gripped her shoulders. "Stick to the plan. Speed, not power. Technique, not tonnage. You know this routine. He'll come in hot." "Good. Anger is sloppy. You stay frosty. Be surgical. End this fast. You have 5 more on deck." Sarah nodded, her breathing deep. Corporal Garcia entered, bare-chested. He was all wiry muscle, with a taekwondo tattoo. He bounced on his toes, a coiled spring. A senior SEAL ref called them to center. "I want a clean fight. Protect yourselves. Touch gloves." They knocked knuckles. Her fist looked small next to his. "Ready?" The ref's arm dropped. "Fight!" Garcia rushed her, feinting to set up a spin kick. She had anticipated it, visualizing this exact move 1,000 times. His spin was perfect, fast, and lethal. She moved inside the kick's arc, using his own momentum to throw him off balance. Garcia's footing was gone. Sarah simply swept his lead leg. Garcia hit the mat hard. She was on him instantly, securing side control. He thrashed, trying to make space, but she had already locked his arm, her legs cinching his neck. An arm triangle choke. It was a replay of their first bout, but faster, tighter, no hesitation. Garcia's eyes bulged. She used his push to transition to full mount, tightening the choke. His face went from red to a deep plum. He tapped 3 desperate slaps on the canvas. Sarah stood. He was on his knees, gasping as the crowd roared. 15 seconds. 1 down. Her own lungs were already burning. Turner saw the truth. The crowd missed. 1 win was easy. The war was attrition. Garcia stumbled out of the ring. Sarah watched him go, her breathing starting to even out. Turner shoved a water bottle at her. Sip. 2 minutes vanishes. The cool water was a gift. She scanned the crowd. Some were stunned, others cheering. The SEALs were ecstatic. The Marines were dead silent. Bennett's sneer was gone. The ref's voice cut in. Time. The break was over. Next up, Lieutenant Mitchell versus Lance Corporal Rodriguez. The Marine, known as Hound, entered the ring with murder in his eyes. This was the real battle. Her precision against his raw violence. He'd earned his nickname. He was 6'1" and 200 pounds of raw aggression, with scarred knuckles and ink-covered arms. He skipped the theatrics and just stalked her. Nothing personal, ma'am, he growled. It's just business, she said. The ref backed away. Fight! Rodriguez charged like a bull, throwing a wild right hand aimed to take her head off. She had watched his sparring tapes. She was prepared. Every haymaker he threw had the same telegraphed windup. It was a powerful but predictable attack. She stepped inside the pocket, the punch whistling past her ear. His follow-through left him wide open. It was a flawless judo hip throw. Her hip was the fulcrum, his mass the lever. Pure physics. Rodriguez was flying before he knew it, his eyes wide with shock. He slammed into the mat, the air exploding from his lungs. She heard his pained gasp, but the man was tough as nails. He was already trying to scramble up. She gave him no room, taking his back and sinking her forearm under his chin. The rear naked choke was perfect. His neck was trapped, cutting off blood to his brain. He grabbed her arm with brutal strength, trying to pry it loose. His power was immense, but useless against perfect technique. The hold was absolute. Her position was too solid. No amount of strength could break it. He surged up, trying to stand and slam her into the corner. The crowd went silent. He staggered, trying to dislodge her. She felt the frantic pulse in his neck begin to fade. His legs wobbled. Tap, Corporal, she whispered. He just shook his head. One last act of defiance. The light went out of his eyes, and they both went down. She held the choke with cold precision, letting go the second he went limp. The ref was already there, waving it off. He's unconscious. Break! She moved away as the corpsman rushed in. Rodriguez was out cold, his face bruised, but breathing. The gym was dead silent. This was no longer a contest. She had put a man to sleep, and her own lungs were screaming, with 4 more men to go. He came to in about 30 seconds. He gave her a brief look of respect, then shame. The medics led him away. When Sarah stood, her legs felt like concrete. That second win had cost her dearly. That was a grinder. Turner was right there. Flawless, but you're burning fuel. Drink. She dropped onto the stool, every muscle screaming. 4 more. Stay in this moment, you hear me? Turner barked. Only this fight matters, the ref shouted. Time. Lieutenant Mitchell. Corporal Martinez. The wrestler came in, sure he wouldn't be the next to fall, but she had spent 3 days studying his habits. Martinez was a compact 6 feet 185. His college tapes showed a relentless string of takedowns and a crushing top game. That very repetition made him predictable. His plan was simple: ground and pound. Ignoring the pain, Sarah stood ready, gloves touched. Just business, ma'am, he said. I'm taking this. She met his eyes. We'll see. Fight. He circled the ring, A straight rush was a bad idea. He feinted, looking for an opening. She mirrored him, watching his core for the tell. 30 long seconds passed. The crowd got restless. He faked high and then shot low for a classic takedown. A blur of motion. But she was already gone. Having read the subtle shift in his weight, she had only a heartbeat. She sprawled, hips hitting the mat. He grabbed at empty air. Before he could adjust, she was on his back like a shadow. But Martinez was a pro. He tried to hip escape, to create space. She anticipated it, locking in a body triangle he couldn't break. His hands shot up to defend his neck. The choke wasn't open, so she switched tactics. She rained down short, sharp punches, not for a KO, but to force an opening. It was textbook. 1, 2, 3 shots landed. He covered up, exposing his throat for a moment. She went for the choke. He tucked his chin tight. She went back to the punches. 5, 6, 7. His defense was slowing. The ref moved closer, watching intently. The strikes continued. Then, for just an instant, his hands dropped. The ref slid between them. It's done. Break. 2 minutes, 8 seconds, 3 down. She was only halfway through. Her shoulders burned and her legs felt like concrete. The real wolves were still waiting. It was a good call. Martinez was chewing on his mistake. She helped him up. Good scrap, Corporal. You're a shark on the mat. Not today. He bit back, leaving as she limped to her corner. Water. A towel. 3 down. Halfway home. Report? Turner barked, running on fumes. She couldn't fake it. Good. Show them you're bleeding. You run this pit. She collapsed on the stool, her shoulders on fire. 8 minutes of pure hell. She'd never been through a grinder like this. 3 men, back to back. This wasn't sparring. She was sucking wind with 3 more hostiles inbound. Her dad's face appeared. The Mog. 4 tangos down. 11 minutes. Shattered ribs. He survived for 11 minutes. She just had to go longer. Failure wasn't an option. Time! The ref shouted. Mitchell! Davis! Davis stepped in, cool and lethal. The platoon's best striker. He'd take his time. Since her tank was empty, his patience was a death warrant. Davis circled her. A predator at 5'11", 180, a Muay Thai practitioner, a strategist. This was about to be a chess match. Davis was a legit middleweight who watched 3 teammates fall. He knew the danger. They met mid-mat. His expression was a stone mask. Respect, ma'am, but this stops here. I know. The fight began. Davis settled into his guard. His guard was squared away. Textbook MC map. She searched his perimeter for a breach. He threw a kick. She stonewalled it. He tried again. Same damn result. He was setting the pace, trying to draw her into his fight. The squad bay was dead silent. A pure chess match. Then he lunged, a blade of an elbow cutting the air. She evaded it by a hair, feeling the breeze on her skin. He jammed her counter before it started. They reset. 1 minute gone. He fired a crisp combo. She batted it aside. Then he drove a knee to her gut, and she snagged it. Her hands clamped around his thigh. In that split second, Davis recognized his blunder. His eyes flashed with alarm. He was overextended, unbalanced, standing on one leg. She wrenched his limb, turning his momentum against him. There was no escape. She vaulted into the air, hitting a flying triangle she'd repped 1,000 times. Her legs scissored around his neck and shoulder as they crashed down. The choke was sunk in deep, his own arm crushing the artery. The technique was perfect. Davis, a true pro, tried to sit up and make space. The angle was too sharp. She flexed her legs, cutting off the oxygen to his head. He struggled for 40 seconds, his face darkening to a deep violet. Then he tapped out. 1 minute, 44 seconds. She released the lock. Davis gulped air, got up, and gave her a fist bump. Flawless, ma'am. She bumped it back. You're a damn good striker, she panted. Not good enough, he replied, grinning as he walked out proud. The squad bay erupted, 4 down, but Turner caught the tremor in her hands. 2 to go. The bruisers were up next. Her body screamed at every motion. On the outside, she looked composed. On the inside, she was breaking down. 4 fights in 14 minutes. She had nothing left in the tank. Turner could see it plain as day. 2 left. The monster and the man. "This is where you earn it, Lieutenant." "Mitchell's don't quit." She just nodded, chugging water for the trial to come. On the far side, the last 2 Marines huddled up. Sergeant Cooper, the huge one, looked uneasy. Staff Sergeant Bennett, their alpha, was like stone, his frigid gaze already devising a new strategy. The ref announced the fight. "Mitchell! Cooper!" Cooper stood 6-4, 240, giving up 115 pounds. The largest man in the bay. And he was fresh. Her reserves were gone. His were untouched. This fight would take every last ounce of her will. Cooper was a giant at 6'4", 240, with a 12-inch reach on her. The mats groaned under his weight. She forced herself to stand tall. Her legs felt numb, disconnected from her body. He towered over her, his expression regretful. "Ma'am, respectfully, I'd rather not." "Then finish it fast, Sergeant." His hand engulfed hers. "Begin." Cooper pressed forward, using his bulk to own the space. She moved on heavy feet, her quickness drained by the last 4 bouts. A jab snapped out. She swayed back from it. A second one came. She moved under it. He was finding his distance, controlling the action. For 30 seconds, he probed as she tried to close the gap. He could play this game all round, taking her apart from the outside. She rushed in after a slip, but he simply turned away. 1 minute dragged on, and the onlookers grew restless. But she was getting used to his rhythm. He was massive, but slow. She remembered his tell from training. A low left hand when he gassed out. She needed to drain his stamina. She pressed in, forcing him to engage. He responded with sound boxing technique. After 90 seconds, he was breathing hard. Those huge arms were feeling the strain. His left guard stayed up. 1 minute and 45 seconds ticked away. He launched a heavy right. She ducked beneath it and saw her chance. His left hand dropped for a split second. Fatigue. Her gut screamed at her. This was an all-or-nothing move. If she missed, his 240 pounds would smother her. But if it worked... She dove in, jumping into a flying armbar, her legs wrapping his arm as she fell. Total shock registered on Cooper's face. He tried to yank his arm free, but it was caught. Her hips cranked on his elbow as they hit the mat. A gruesome crack resounded in the room. Cooper roared, hammering the mat to submit. She let go instantly. Corman rushed in as he cradled his arm. 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Technique beat tonnage, 5 down. She was completely spent. Her legs trembled and her vision blurred. 1 more to go. The final test. The man behind this whole ordeal. Staff Sergeant Bennett. He was untouched, and now he knew she was a threat. Her heartbeat pounded in her skull. Turner jammed a water bottle at her. "Drink, breathe, 2 minutes." She obeyed, her hands trembling after 15 minutes of non-stop war. Every drill had been proven in the field. The Phantom Protocol worked. Next up, Bennett, 6'2", 195, a Golden Gloves champ, untouched, undefeated. He'd been watching for 20 minutes, breaking down her every action. She met his gaze. Bennett's cocky grin was gone, replaced by the sober focus of a warrior who had underestimated his foe. This last man was another breed entirely, a tactician. As Corman helped Cooper away, he gave her a nod of earned respect. The ref walked over. "You good to go, Lieutenant?" "Affirmative." "Last one." 3-minute rounds. "Copy?" She nodded. This one wouldn't go to the scorecards. Bennett was an intimidating presence in front of her. They touched gloves. "You've hit your wall, Lieutenant." "We'll see about that, Staff Sergeant." The ref's hand fell. "Engage!" The next 6 minutes would be a trial by fire, her pure grit against his perfect technique. Bennett wasn't some brawler. His form was perfect, his jab a ramrod checking her defense. She dodged one, then a second. He was methodical, searching for any flaw. It was a vicious game of chess. She was trying to save energy. After 17 minutes, she was empty. He advanced with a 1-2. She blocked the first punch. The second one connected clean. She ducked a hook and went for his legs. His defense was flawless. 30 seconds in, he was running the show. A 4-punch combination hit the mark. The last hook exploded, a white flash in her eyes. He sensed the end was near. He threw another barrage. A jab busted her lip, 1 minute down. She was always a fraction too slow, her body betraying her. He threw a right, she moved with it and chopped his leg. He absorbed it, and his return cross snapped her head back. He was picking her apart. To lose here meant losing everything. Turner's voice broke through the haze. "You're gassed? Show him your heart." The timer showed 2 minutes. He landed another clean shot. Her right eye was swelling shut. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. He flicked a jab. She dodged. She saw his shoulder drop the signal, but she couldn't react. The buzzer sounded. 3 minutes. Round 1 was over. She collapsed onto the stool, gasping. "He's smothering me. I can't find an opening." Turner's voice was iron. "Then make one. Drown him." "You saw his tell. I'm gassed," she wheezed. "Then get gas choking him out. Suffer on his back." He gripped her jaw. "Your father did 11 rounds. You're doing 20. Make him remember this." The buzzer shrieked. She rose on shaky legs to meet a man who looked fresh. Round 2. He stalked forward, a machine of constant, frigid pressure. She refused to fight his fight. It was time to unleash the beast. He threw a jab, she slipped inside, nullifying his range in an instant. He pushed to create space, but she redirected his momentum. A perfectly timed sweep took his legs. That was the only chance she'd have. They hit the mat hard. He attempted to establish guard, but her grappling was superior. She sliced to side control. He bucked wildly. She rode the motion and took his back. This was her domain. Bennett was caught, face down, in a body triangle. He tried to rise, to throw her off, but her legs were a vice of steel, an anchor he could not lift. Her hands began the hunt for his neck. He protected himself, burying his chin. She was deliberate, sensing his fear build. Short, punishing shots to the body followed. A critical mistake. He grabbed her hands, baring his neck for an instant. Her arm shot under his chin. The choke was sunk. Not perfect, but deep enough. The pain on his jawbone was extreme. For half a minute, the battle was for inches. His desperation peaked as he clawed at her arm with everything he had. It would be his final miscalculation. She adjusted, her forearm digging into his carotid. The choke was now flawless. His eyes widened. He had 10 seconds of consciousness. His pulse hammered against her arm. Bennett's ego wouldn't allow a tap. Defiant until the lights went out. 5 seconds. His movement slowed. 3. He went slack. The referee jumped in. "It's over. He's out." She let go. Bennett crumpled to the mat. The room exploded as she knelt, exhausted, but the victor. 6 opponents, 6 victories. 22 minutes of raw combat. She'd achieved the impossible. It wasn't a party. It was a declaration. The whole barracks lost its mind. Her own legs gave out. She was completely drained. 6 bigger men, all defeated. Korsman tended to Bennett, who was still unconscious after half a minute. He blinked away the haze, shame flooding in. She watched him from 10 feet. They locked eyes. A change occurred. Recognition. Respect. She extended a trembling hand. Honor prevailed. He accepted it, letting her help him rise. The crowd went wild. She held their hands high. He whispered, "I was wrong." She nodded. "I know." "How?" he asked. "You're on your feet. You didn't tap. You ate the loss like a Marine. That's not about gender." His eyes welled up. "Don't cry, princess." She threw his insult back. Her smile was bloody, one eye closing fast. "And I won." The referee raised her arm. The verdict was sealed before 400 Marines. Technique had defeated brute strength, and will had bested them both. Master Chief Turner pulled her in. "Your dad's watching, so damn proud." The gravity hit her, the ache, the fatigue, but no tears. The job wasn't done. The true victory wasn't the fight itself. It was about redemption and a potential new beginning. As the gym cleared, medics gave them both a once-over. Vitals, pupils, the whole concussion protocol. Sarah iced her busted lip on the mat. Her body felt shattered. Every muscle was on fire. Adrenaline made her hands tremble. Yet she'd done it. 6 for 6. An impossible task. Completed. Across the mat, Bennett iced his throat, his public defeat fresh. Captain Harrison strode toward them. His expression was a mask, but pride showed in his eyes. Solid work, Lieutenant. You're cleared. Thank you, sir. Bennett squares this on Monday, 0800. He'll make a public statement. Harrison waited a beat. You showed everyone that excellence has no gender. When he departed, a dense, quiet air replaced the tension. Bennett spoke first, eyes on the floor. You could have broken my arm, let me keep my pride. You chose the choke. She considered it. A snap doesn't teach a lesson. You needed this. A straight-up loss. No way around it. Pure skill. He nodded slowly. Rachel would have liked you. Sarah stayed quiet. My sister dreamed of being a Marine. I told her she was too little. He choked on the words. Before I took it back, she was gone. For 8 years, I ensured no woman made me wrong again. You proved she could have done it. My ego crushed her dream. The admission filled the space between them. It was always about his sister. 8 years of guilt festering into venom. What she said next mattered. Your words didn't take her life, but denying others their chance dishonors her memory. I see that now. His eyes met hers. Teach me the protocol, so I can help the next Rachel. She extended her hand. He shook it. Deal. Tuesday, 0600. And bring your guys. The weekend was for healing. Monday, she felt solid. 500 Marines were in formation. The 6 stood behind their staff sergeant. Sarah stood at parade rest with her command staff. The sun was bright. Bennett approached the lectern, his dress blues immaculate. His expression was solemn. Morning, I'm Staff Sergeant Bennett. I am here to offer a public apology. His voice was clear. To Lieutenant Mitchell and every female Marine in this corps, I was wrong. He stopped. Totally and without excuse. I measured a warrior by their gender. I let a personal bias become a professional failure. I chose to humiliate, not to evaluate. His hands trembled. On Saturday, a spent Lieutenant Mitchell beat 6 of us with pure skill. Heart is the only standard, not gender. He looked right at her. Lieutenant Mitchell, you are a warrior. I was wrong to doubt you and to break you. You've earned my respect. He delivered a crisp salute. She returned a perfect salute. A single SEAL started clapping, and it spread through the ranks like fire. The words were public. Actions would build the trust. In 8 weeks, his squad was transformed. Sarah's protocol was their gospel. Leverage over size, brains over brawn. Bennett became her best student, devouring the why behind each move. The system required intellect. A rivalry born on the mat became true respect. Teaching her father's system gave Sarah purpose. Then, one Tuesday changed it all. Harrison found them on the obstacle course. Mitchell, Bennett. My office. Now. They booked it to the admin building. Brass and a civilian analyst waited. Sit, Harrison clipped. We have a situation. Yemen. 8 American contractors taken 3 days ago. Intel places them at a remote facility. The rescue is green-lit. SEAL Team 5 has the lead. He looked at her. Lieutenant, you're in charge of the CQB element. 12 operators, a mix of ours and theirs. The mission is simple. Extract the hostages alive. Sarah's heart hammered. A live op. Was she prepared? Yes, sir. I'm in. Gunny Bennett, you'll be attached to the lieutenant's element under her command. Any issues? Bennett was instant. None, sir. It's an honor. The following 72 hours became a whirlwind of briefs and run-throughs. Sunrise lit the U.S.S. Winston Churchill. Master Chief Turner, having pulled strings to be there, found her by the railing. Your dad saw a sunrise like this before Mogadishu, he said. She nodded. I'm scared. What if I lose one of my people? You live with it, just like every leader before you. The plan is solid. Trust the training, trust the protocol. In the hangar bay, 12 operators stood ready. Kitted out, weapons hot, good to go. Sarah addressed them. Gentlemen, 8 Americans have been held for 4 days. The objective is clear. Get them out and get everyone home. The briefing screen came to life. The sterile quiet of the ready room hung heavy, thick with the smell of gun oil and ozone. On the sand table, 3 miniature buildings sat under a single bare bulb. The package is here, Lieutenant Rourke said, her voice cutting through the silence. Second floor, center structure, intel says at least 6 hostiles. Gunny Miller watched her, his face a mask of stone. ROE is simple. We bring our people home. She met the eyes of each Marine in the stack. If you have a shot but a hostage is in the way, you stand down. We eat the risk, they don't. Her gaze lingered on Miller. Any questions? The silence was absolute. Good. Gear up. Wheels up in 30. The air crackled. This was it. This was the burden of command. This was the promise you made to your people. And for Gunny Miller, this was following a green lieutenant he didn't fully trust into the jaws of hell. The Zodiac slapped against the black water, silent killers slicing toward the shore at 02:15. They hit the sand and melted into the darkness. The 2-click hump through the oppressive humidity was a gut check. Rourke moved on point. Miller right on her 6, a silent shadow. They reached the perimeter fence at 02:55. Through the green glow of their NVGs, 3 sentries slouched at their posts, bored and careless. Rourke raised a hand, her fingers curled down. 3, 2, 1. The soft cough of suppressed rifles was barely audible. 3 shadows crumpled to the ground. They moved through the breach like wraiths. At the primary building, Miller slapped a charge onto the doorframe. Rourke gave the signal. The door disintegrated. She was the first one through the smoke. Her rifle was up, the world a shimmering emerald nightmare. Hallway clear. The team flowed in behind her like water. Contact! The shout was sharp. 3 tangos caught completely off guard. Her rifle barked twice. 1 down. Miller dropped the second before his shell casings hit the floor. One of the SEALs stitched up the third. They cleared the room in 7 seconds flat. Stairs! Rourke yelled. They hit the fatal funnel just as shouts erupted from above. The element of surprise was gone. She slammed her shoulder into the upstairs door as the breacher shattered the lock. Inside, a knot of 8 terrified hostages, bound but alive. Her team swarmed the room, knives flashing as they cut the zip ties. A storm of automatic fire erupted from the floor below. The compound was a hornet's nest. Compromised! We are compromised! Move! Rourke hauled a hostage to his feet. She shoved them toward the stairs. Miller and 3 other Marines laid down a wall of covering fire. A hostile fighter appeared in the stairwell, raising his AK. Rourke put a clean double tap in his chest. Threat down! Go! 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 They hit the ground floor. The main gate was a 60-foot-long kill box, a death sentence. Back door! She screamed over the din. Miller, find us another way out. He and his fire team broke off. Rourke and the SEALs held the line. Miller's voice crackled in her ear. Got an exit, West Side. It's clear. Move! They fought their way through the building, a moving shield of bodies around the package. They burst through a rear maintenance door into the humid night and ran, putting distance between them and the chaos, the hostages stumbling forward on pure adrenaline. A click from the extraction point, the night exploded. A heavy machine gun opened up from a ridgeline, tracer rounds ripping the air apart, pinning them down. The whole damn op was going foobar. This was the crucible of command. The team hit the dirt, returning fire at the muzzle flashes, completely suppressed. Miller saw it first, a shallow ditch that offered a flanking route. Hayes, we're flanking, he yelled into his comms. Give us 30 seconds of hate. Roger that. Rourke's rifle screamed on full auto, a desperate prayer of lead. Miller and 4 Marines moved low and fast, using the terrain like the ghosts they were. They came up on the gun's flank and silenced the ambush permanently. Miller's team mopped up. Then his voice, tight with pain, came over the radio. I'm hit. Legs busted up bad. I can't move. Rourke's decision was instantaneous. Team, secure the package at the LZ. I'm going for the gunny. Negative, Lieutenant, came Turner's voice, cold as steel from the command net. That's a direct order. Send someone else. Not a chance, Master Chief. She was already sprinting 60 yards across open ground as rounds snapped past her ears. She found him behind a boulder, a tourniquet already cinched high and tight on his thigh. What in the hell do you think you're doing? Miller snarled through gritted teeth. Saving your salty ass. Now shut up. She slung his rifle, grabbed his gear, and hauled him into a fireman's carry. 195 pounds of pissed-off Marine on her 125-pound frame. And then she ran. 50 yards. 40. The world was nothing but the burn in her legs, and the next desperate step, 20 yards. Her team's rifles were a continuous roar of suppressive fire. 10 yards. Her knees buckled. She collapsed as the team's medic dragged Miller the final few feet to cover. Birds are inbound. 30 mics, Turner's voice crackled. 2 F-18s screamed overhead, turning the ridgeline into a churning cloud of dirt and fire. The shooting stopped. 2 Black Hawks settled into the LZ. Rourke pushed the last of the 8 hostages aboard. Miller was loaded on last. He grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. You saved my life. You're my Marine, Gunny, she said, her voice strained. We don't leave our own. She squeezed his hand. Besides, you're not getting out of morning PT. He managed a ragged laugh. Roger that, ma'am. The helos lifted, the coast of Yemen receding below. Mission success. 8 rescued, 0 killed in action, 1 wounded. Rourke finally slumped against the vibrating bulkhead, completely spent. She had led them. Her father's system had worked. But a bigger war was always waiting. 6 months later, a promotion and a new set of orders would change her life, while a secret held by Turner threatened to break her. Lieutenant Commander Rourke now stood on the grinder at Dam Neck, Virginia. The Yemen op had punched her ticket, getting her promoted to a coveted training billet with SEAL Team 6. Her command under fire was already legendary. Miller, fully recovered, had pulled every string he had to become the new Marine liaison to DevGru. He wouldn't serve under anyone else. Now, she taught advanced, close-quarters battle to 32 of the military's most elite operators. 30 guys, 2 women, and Miller, a master of the very protocol she taught, was her right hand. Today's lesson, she said, her voice echoing in the hangar, is about fighting a larger opponent. A mountain of an Army Ranger, 6'5" and 230, stepped forward with a smirk. Size is a factor, Rourke said calmly, but not the way you think. He's got 80 pounds on me. Watch close. The takedown was a blur of leverage and brutal efficiency. Later, a young female Marine approached her. Ma'am, how do you deal with it? The mind games, the size thing. A hard smile touched Rourke's lips. You don't. You make it irrelevant. You become so damn good, your skill is the only thing they can see. True skill doesn't salute rank, Miller added from the side. The doubters learned that the hard way. I ate Matt in front of my whole battalion because of her. Best lesson I ever got. The room chuckled. Afterward, Miller approached. Ma'am, your 1600 is in 10. Rourke checked her watch. Right, the brief she'd been dreading. Thanks, Gunny. Secure the gear. Already done, ma'am. In her service blues, she walked to the quiet Marsoc Memorial Garden. Sergeant Major Turner was waiting. Retired, but his presence was still a force of nature. At 63, he was more salt than pepper, but his eyes were as sharp as honed steel. Sergeant Major, Casey. His voice was gravelly but warm. How's training? Solid. Teaching Dad's system, seeing it work. This is what it's all for. He'd be proud. He wanted the protocol to outlive him. Looks like he got his wish. A heavy silence fell between them as they scanned the names etched into black granite. So many gone. Rourke's fingers found her father's name. Gunnery Sergeant William Rourke. A ritual she'd performed for 13 years. The orders came down, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Task Force Command in Afghanistan. High-value target missions. 6-month tour. You taking it? Turner asked, already knowing the answer. I don't know. I feel like I still have to prove Yemen wasn't a one-off. Turner was quiet for a long moment. Your father told me something. The night before that last op. The night he died. The air turned to ice in her lungs. She couldn't find her voice. He said this life, it's not about the fight, or the medals, or proving a damn thing. Turner's voice carried the weight of 13 years of silence. It's about grieving your brothers properly, getting your head right, and then getting back on the line. Because someone has to hold it. Turner's voice cracked with emotion. We hurt because we're built to take it and just keep going. To break and not give an inch of ground. The wall she had built around her heart for 13 years shattered. For her father, for the stolen time, for the crushing weight of his legacy, the grief finally broke free. Turner's hand came to rest on her shoulder. You were 13 when they handed you that flag. You locked it all away and made yourself into iron. She remembered Miller's early jab at her. Asterisk, tears are for girls, princess. Asterisk, he thought it was a sign of weakness. He couldn't have been more wrong. The tears were never the problem. Bottling it up when you're busted inside, Turner said, his voice low. That's what gets you killed out there. It's like ignoring a gunshot wound. He nodded grimly. Your father felt every single loss. He'd take his moment, get squared away, then he'd be the first man in the stack. Best damn raider I ever knew. Toughest man alive, and he still grieved. Miller appeared at the edge of the garden, hesitating to approach. Rourke waved him over. He walked toward them, his demeanor deferential. Apologies for the intrusion, ma'am. Quick sitrep. Your brief's been pushed 48. High Command is reviewing your proposed roster. Her gaze shifted from Turner to Miller, and finally back to the etched name on the wall. Make it 72 hours. I need to get my head right. Miller gave a sharp nod, but held his ground for a moment. Ma'am, you set the standard for all of us. He would be proud. After he departed, she faced Turner again. I'm taking the command. It's not for them. It's my duty. There are monsters in this world, and we're the ones who hunt them. He knew that. But Gunny, when I get back from this, I'm taking my leave, no arguments. I'm going home. I'm going to see my mom, and I have to stand at his grave and just let it go. Be a daughter. Turner pulled her into a firm, fatherly embrace. Best damn decision you've made in years. Your old man would have signed off on that one to 100%. The two warriors stood among the ghosts of the fallen, one paying tribute, both preparing for the war to come. Wiping her face, Rourke settled her cover on her head. Time to prep the team. What's the word? We're greenlit. The job is a go. We're ready. A small, proud grin touched Turner's face. He had one last ritual before every op. What was it? Hold it together, kid, he'd say. But if you're gonna lose your shit, you do it after the objective is secure. You grieve when the fight's been won. Then you re-rack and get ready for the next one. That's the job. Rourke turned and walked toward the briefing room, Miller falling into step beside her. Gunnery Sergeant, I appreciate you giving me the space. Ma'am, you showed me how it's done. You pulled my ass out of the fire in Yemen. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. But if you want to call it even, you can help me get the new guys spun up. We'll show them that skill is the only thing that matters. Roger that, ma'am. Inside the skiff, 12 operators sat waiting. This was her team for the mountains of Afghanistan, a team that would follow her through hell and back because she had bled with them and earned their absolute trust. Rourke stood before them, thinking of her father, of Turner, and the brutal road that had led her to this moment. All right, devils, listen up. We've got 6 hard months ahead of us. Let's dig into the op order. The brief was a masterclass in brutal efficiency. Later that night, in her Spartan quarters, she laid out her father's dog-eared logbook, his raider pin, and a frayed martial arts belt. They were relics of a legacy she now carried not as a burden, but as a shield. Her mind replayed the firefight in Yemen, Miller's caustic respect, and the fight to come. One thing held it all together, his unwavering faith in her. She opened her journal and began to write. Dad, it's been 13 years since you taught me the Phantom Protocol. I'm adding a thought tonight. You taught me the system is a mindset, not a series of moves. The greatest lesson was that a warrior's power isn't in avoiding the fall, but in the will to get back up. It's about eating the pain to see the mission through. You said to hold the line, but your life showed me that grief isn't weakness. The fighter who masters that pain is the most dangerous. I'm spinning up a team for the mountains. We're gonna hunt them down. I'll provide a full after-action report stateside. For now, the legacy you built will stand. The Phantom Protocol is Bennett's to carry, and for every Marine I train, it's for anyone who gets that technique, beats muscle, and grit is everything. Thank you for getting me ready, and proving skill doesn't have a gender. I love you, I miss you, I will not fail. Sarah. She put her logbook next to his. 2 generations, 2 combat journals, 1 central truth. Real strength is admitting you can break and having the guts to get back in the damn fight. 3 weeks later, a C-17 clawed its way out of Andrews. Sarah, Bennett, and the team were wheels up for a 6-month tour. Over the Atlantic, his tags felt cold on her skin. A young devil dog noticed them. Your old man's, ma'am? Yeah. Raider. KIA, Afghanistan, 2011. My condolences, ma'am. No need. He went out on his shield, covering his guys. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. He got me ready for this. Taught me falling apart is all about timing. Ma'am, we all break. You just choose when, after the objective is secure. When the job is done and you've earned the right. She scanned her team. Then you get your head straight for the next op. The mission is constant. We hold the line. The young Marine's face hardened with understanding. Leaning back, Sarah shut her eyes. In 6 months, she'd be back in the world. She'd take her leave, see her mother, visit his grave. The pain would come, and she'd let it. But right now, there was a job to do, a team to lead, an enemy to hunt. At this moment, she was Major Sarah Mitchell. Raider, Phantom, a legend's daughter. The truth was simple. Warriors grieve. For the fallen, for the price. For the parts of themselves they leave in the dirt, because only something that's been broken can be truly unbreakable. They feel it all. They wipe the tears away, and then they get back to the war. It's not some tough guy facade, it's a creed. It is the very line they hold.